Welcome back to Acknowledging Student Behavior, Methods of Feedback, Part 2, What Feedback Should I Give? In determining what type of feedback you should be providing your students, you must remember that the purpose of educationally oriented feedback is twofold. First, the purpose is to provide information to improve or maintain a student's performance. Second is to increase the student's motivation, their engagement, and their independence. Let's take a look at each method of feedback. Here we see three general methods of providing positive and constructive feedback: behavior-specific praise, instructive feedback, and corrective feedback. Behavior-specific praise is the most powerful praise. It is precise and descriptive and requires at least a 4-to-1 positive to negative or corrective feedback ratio. Instructive feedback confirms the correct response and provides additional information to the student. The purpose of this type of feedback is to increase the efficiency of our instruction. And third, corrective feedback. It affirms and sets the student up for success. It is descriptive in regards to the error, but also provides guidance on the student's future actions. So we're going to first dive a little bit more deeply into behavior-specific praise. So, providing simple, vague statements such as "good job" may seem very effective for some, but the information provided to the student regarding his or her performance is limited, if not non-existent. Again, the most powerful praise is behavior-specific praise. It involves giving the student a precise praise that includes a description of the appropriate behavior demonstrated, regardless of whether the behavior is academic or social. According to Royer and Simonson, a substantial research base suggests that behavior-specific praise increases student academic and behavioral outcomes across age, grade level, and disability status. So I'm going to give you an example of behavior-specific praise and its implications. You may have a student, we'll just call her Lisa, sitting in her chair and silently listening to the teacher rather than roaming the classroom and disrupting others. When we use behavior-specific praise, the teacher may say, "Lisa, great job sitting in your chair and listening while I was explaining the assignment." So by using behavior-specific praise, the teacher is attempting to positively reinforce the appropriate behavior, the listening, staying in the seat, in hopes that Lisa will stay seated in her chair and listen in the future. In doing so, the teacher is also reminding the other students in the classroom about the expectations, as well as letting them know that reinforcement may be available to them as well. The same effect would not be possible or be able to be achieved if if the teacher just simply says to Lisa, "Good job," or gives her the thumbs up. These examples of general praise lack the key information Lisa needs to repeat the desired behavior. So there are some there are some specific guidelines for each method of praise. So we're going to look at the guidelines for behavior-specific praise. First, it's best used when describing a student's improvement or effort rather than ability. Teachers should avoid statements that are evaluations of a student's cognitive ability, such as, "You're so smart," or "You're really good in math." Students may see themselves as either smart or not smart, which can be perceived as static. So they get in their head, they're always smart or they're never smart. This judgment may affect students' confidence and discourage an individual from trying new tasks or taking risks. Instead, when a teacher praises a student on his or her improvements or efforts, it's much more fluid process, and the student can relate the statement to their individual goals. They can relate it to their progress towards their goals and what's needed to be done to improve their progress. The second guideline establishes the necessary timing and frequency of delivery of behavior-specific praise. As with other positive reinforcement strategies, the teacher is most effective when delivering behavior-specific praise as soon as the desired behavior occurs, especially for those skills the student is initially learning. Typically, the reinforcement will be less powerful as the time between the behavior and the acknowledgement increases. In addition to the timing, the frequency in which teachers provide BSP, especially in relationship to negative feedback, is extremely important. As a rule of thumb, at least a 4-to-1 ratio of positive feedback to negative feedback statements, and that includes corrective statements, is suggested. And there is some research that suggests an even higher rate for students with more challenging behaviors. What is the reasoning for this ratio? Well, first, it provides providing positive feedback helps build the student's confidence and independence in learning a skill. And second, a student receiving at least a 4-to-1 ratio of positive to negative feedback is a sign that the student's performance of the skill, whether academic or social, is either improving or maintaining. On the other hand, if it's less than a 4-to-1 ratio, that's a signal that the student is not learning the skill and the teacher needs to change instruction. So we're going to take a quick look of an example of specific positive behavior feedback, behavior-specific praise, through the Midwest PBIS network. Hopefully I can get this to work. We'll see. Nope. Let's try it again.
Sorry, it's a great job.
Oh, Mr. Newton must like his blue shirt.
I like that.
Why didn't Mr. Newton like my blue shirt? Maybe he likes green better.
Sorry, I like that.
Why didn't Mr. Newton like my green shirt? Maybe he likes stripes better. Why hasn't Mr. Lutz said anything to me? I'm wearing his favorite shirt.
Why is Muhammad upset and confused about Mr. Lutz's student feedback? Perhaps because Mr. Lutz needs to be specific when he gives feedback on students' positive behaviors. Let's try this again.
Sorry, it's a great job walking safely in the hallway. Good work. Sorry, it's actually being responsible. Pick up your tray and pick up the trash. Wow, sorry. Thanks for opening the door. It's very respectful of you and your whole class. Hey, Mohammed, can I borrow you for a second?
Yeah.
Hey, I've noticed today you've had a great day following all of our building-wide expectations. You've been safe, you've been respectful, you've been responsible. I've seen you walking safe in the hallway. I've seen you picking up trash, and I've also seen you holding doors to your classmates. We really appreciate it.
Being specific when giving feedback reinforces the teaching and learning of appropriate school behavior, increasing the likelihood it will happen again.
Okay, so that was a great video that demonstrated behavior-specific praise. And again, that is from the Midwest PBIS Network, which indicates that behavior-specific praise and methods of feedback are all PBIS strategies. They are evidence-based. So let's proceed to the next slide. Now we're going to be looking at instructive feedback. Instructive feedback involves the teacher not only confirming the correct response, but also providing additional information or relating the response to previously learned concepts or new information. Again, the purpose is to increase the efficiency of instruction by allowing students to learn more in the same amount of time. While this is preferable for all students, it is even more important when we're working with students with emotional behavior disabilities who likely have co-occurring academic difficulties. These students often need to make greater gains in a shorter amount of time than their peers. When we acknowledge the correct response, whether academic or behavior, we have the opportunity to also create behavior momentum. As every instance of positive behavior increases, the probability of compliance with the next request. Behavior momentum is also an evidence-based strategy. Although primarily used for academic instruction, instructive feedback can also be used for behavior. Let's return to the earlier scenario with Lisa sitting in her chair and silently listening rather than roaming the classroom and disrupting others. The teacher could add some instructive feedback by saying, "Lisa, great job sitting in your chair and listening while I was explaining the assignment. It may also be important to jot down what I'm saying to help you remember when completing the assignment." So in this scenario, Lisa's not only being positively reinforced for her appropriate behavior, but she's also being reminded of the additional strategies that may promote her academic support, and that's the taking notes or jotting down the notes. So WORDS provides us some guidelines guidelines to follow when using instructive feedback. First, we as teachers should identify the information to be presented through instructive feedback. He and his colleagues suggest asking the following questions to help us identify that information. First, is there information that is important for the student to learn but is not being taught directly? So that then brings us back to being intentional, knowing our students' strengths and weaknesses, knowing what we're needing to develop, what skill development we're targeting. And two, is there information that will be taught in the future that is not being taught now, but the student may need some pre-teaching in regards to? And second, the teacher must decide how to present the information. It can be delivered verbally, visually, or through a combination of both. The method that we choose will depend on what information is being presented. And finally, instructive feedback, we use that to increase the likelihood of its effectiveness. Teachers need to use instructional feedback consistently and monitor progress. By providing that intentional feedback, a prior analysis of information a student needs to be taught explicitly. Here are a couple of examples of confirming the correct response and providing additional information while increasing the efficiency of our instruction. In the first example, the teacher is confirming the student's correct response for a writing prompt, but has identified that the child needs additional information regarding parts of speech, specifically adjectives. So she has said, You did a great job describing the dog in the sentence. Remember, a word that describes a noun is an adjective. So at the beginning, she's affirming, providing feedback, confirming the correct response, and then providing that additional information. In the second one, I see everyone is sitting in their ready position. The ready shows the speaker, you are ready to listen to their message. So the teacher is confirming the student is sitting in the ready position, but she has determined that that student needs additional information regarding the purpose of sitting, the instruction for listening skills. So now let's finally take a look at the third method, and that's corrective feedback. The first two methods of feedback involved a teacher's response to an appropriate or desired behavior. In these instances, the feedback is affirmative and sets the student up for success on the next trial. But not all students' responses are correct, so the teacher responses need to facilitate future student appropriate responses. Corrective feedback involves correcting a student's academic or social error. This includes not only describing the error, but also providing guidance on future actions. In other words, the teacher is answering the question, what should you have done instead, for the student. It's important to note that corrective feedback differs from reprimand. Reprimands may acknowledge the error, but they do not provide information on how to correct it. In addition, corrective feedback allows the teacher to prompt the student to admit the appropriate behavior, which will then give an opportunity for positive feedback. For this reason, corrective feedback is preferred over reprimands. Research suggests corrective feedback is effective in increasing student academic and behavioral outcomes. And again, corrective feedback is not the same as a reprimand. So here is the example using Lisa, typically providing corrective feedback for instructional errors comes more naturally for teachers. Most teachers recognize reprimand would be highly ineffective for academics. This is not always the case when a teacher addresses a student's behavioral error, though. So here is a reprimand for Lisa's behavior, and here is corrective feedback in response to Lisa's behavior. If Lisa is out of her seat and talking to others during instruction, a teacher may reprimand her by saying, "Lisa, why are you out of your seat and bothering others? Stop it." This does not provide any constructive feedback by telling Lisa what she should be doing. Instead, she could use corrective feedback by saying, "Lisa, instead of getting out of your seat and talking to others, I need you to sit in your chair and listen while I explain this assignment." So pay close attention to these two examples. Look at the body language. And sadly, this is typical between reprimanding and providing corrective feedback. There are a few general guidelines that teachers can follow when using corrective feedback. First, the teacher can deliver the error correction in a calm, low tone rather than a loud voice. Again, our body language, our tone of our voice, our inflection, all of those send a negative signal to the student. And although this may be challenging, using a calm tone promotes a positive learning environment. Second, teachers can use brief statements, just a few words, no more than one sentence. Oftentimes when we go on and on, we get in a power struggle with students. They want to debate or argue. So the fewer words we can use when we're providing this type of feedback, the better. Finally, Similar to other methods of feedback, teachers are more likely to receive better results when they use corrective feedback consistently. Again, consistency, consistency, consistency. Here are a couple of examples of corrective feedback. Remember that the feedback affirms and sets the student up for success, and it includes a description of the error, but also provides them guidance for their future actions. So here are two good examples. I see an error on this sentence. Remember our editing strategy: COPS, capitalization, overall, punctuation, and spelling. Then we should all be sitting on the rug right now with our hands in our laps and legs crisscross so everyone has space. So we have an additional video. This one is regarding corrective feedback, and we're going to watch that quickly.
Good. Oh, beautiful. So we chose two. Use and compare. Very nice job. Okay? Now let's think again. What do we have to know and understand today in our math to be successful at the end of our learning? So let's think again. Why don't you whisper your answer to someone sitting next to you? Go. Good job. 1, 2, 3. Eyes up here. Nice job. Ethan, what's one thing that we have to know and understand? Okay. What am I comparing, Ethan? What am I comparing in that part of that chart? So I'm comparing fractions, right then? Yeah, so I have to know and understand what a fraction is for us to move. And as Ethan said, I also have to know and understand what a benchmark fraction is, okay? So not only do I have to know what it is, I have to go further into my understanding to understand how it is used and the connections that we make in using it.
All right. So that concludes video 2, what feedback should I give? The next video will be part 3, how should I provide feedback?